Hello and welcome to another tutorial. This time round we are going to be taking a bit of an introductory look at a visual scripting system known as Fungus. So Fungus is a freely available visual scripting system. The code is available as well. It's actually the main one that I use in all of my projects. I'm a huge fan of it. I use it a lot for sort of general level and gameplay scripting of stuff. I find it a really powerful tool for laying that out. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's very easy to add in custom commands. So very, very highly recommend it. So let's dive on in. What I already have set up is I have a basic project with, we've got a couple of rooms set up. I've got the character controller. Now, in terms of then getting Fungus into the project, so it's not currently available in the asset store. That is something that is being worked on to be getting that sorted out again, so it's back available. But we can actually access it direct from the website. And I'll provide the link for this in the description below. So there's a couple of ways we can go about accessing this. Over here on the right, you can see this releases section. So we can go and grab the latest release if we want. And this has a few Unity packages. So the Fungus v313 one, that one here with the short file name, that's the full package, includes everything. So it includes the core essential bits of Fungus, also includes a lot of examples. And this is one of the things that's really great with Fungus. There are a huge amount of examples for it that will talk you through doing all of the many things that it's able to do. So I would generally recommend downloading that package, which I've already downloaded that. So the way you can import that is we can go to Assets, and then we can go to Import Package and Custom Package, and then I could select that one. So Unity will process it, it's going to open up the package, look at the contents there of it, and then once it's done that, presents us with this. So this shows us the content of it. And we've got two main root folders, Fungus and Fungus examples. The main Fungus one, that's an essential one. We need everything that's in that. The Fungus examples, as we can see, there's a huge amount of them. This is one of the things that's great, lots of examples of it. If we don't want to include those, we just untick that. That'll turn off everything below that, and then we could go import. Now I'm not going to do that at this stage. The reason being is there's another way we can access Fungus. So if I go to the main page, we can see all of the code here, and I can select the branch here. At the moment it's set to master, which that's going to correspond to our released version. If we instead go to develop, this is going to give us a one that's a little bit more up to date. This does have some functionality in it that is not there in the release version. Now, something to be aware of with this is because it is a development one, it's not a fully stabilized release. The process of working with it, there might be a few issues that you might run into. Things like if that are not uncommon because it's not fully released yet. So, but the develop one, that's what we're going to be using. So how we use that is we would first download the code. So we can download the zip file here. Now I've already done that and I've already unzipped the file. And here's what the structure of that looks like. We have the full set for the project. So we actually don't need most of these because this is a full copy of the repo. Under Assets, the folder we need is this one here, Fungus. Or if we wanted the examples, we'd grab Fungus examples, or the unit tests, we could bring in the tests. So I'm going to drag this in, and it's going to think about it. Now, we'll actually run into some errors. Those errors don't mean that there's something wrong, anything like of that. What those errors are down to is I've already converted this Unity project over to the new input system, so it's using that by default. There's a couple of updates I need to do to Fungus to actually tell it, then give it access to the new input system. And it's quite straightforward to do that. What I do is I go to the Fungus folder, and in there is a file called fungus.asmdef, the assembly definition. So over here, where it has references, I need to give it a reference to the input system. So I do plus to add one in. And I select, and I want the input system. And then I want to go apply. Unity will then go and recompile the code because that's going to enable a few extra defines. It may run into some things that it then wants to do some updates. I would usually go yes, and also then for ones that might be found later. So that's going to do all of that importing. Let's get started with it. So to create things, if I go to the Tools and Fungus menu, then under Create, got a lot of different options here. We won't look at all of them at the moment. We'll just focus on a few key things. Flowchart is the building block. So our scripting logic, the visual scripting, is contained in flowcharts. You can have multiple flowcharts in the one scene, and each flowchart will contain its own particular set of logic. Flowcharts can also talk to each other. Flowcharts have their own variables that they can store, and again can interact with variables on other flowcharts. We also have these things, they're character and say dialogue and menu dialogue. So Fungus has a lot of support for narrative-based games, and in particular for delivering narrative to the player. So we can set up characters, and a character can be given a portrait and other bits of styling there, as well as name. And then when that person is talking, you can have their portrait appear and the dialogue next to it. The say dialogue is what gets shown to perform the actual displaying of text. We have menus, things like that. So I'm just going to start and create a flowchart to begin with. So this I'm going to call the initial tutorial. So once I've created that, I'm going to then open this up. And then this is what our flowchart window looks like. So with this, we have blocks. So if I select this block, then we can see it's also got a little bit of text above it saying game started. So we can have blocks automatically execute by default. And there's a bunch of different things we can be listening for. We can be listening for different inputs. We can be tying it into various mono-behavior related things. There's a lot of different things we can actually be setting up there for that particular block. For things like a game started, we can also set a bit of a delay. So really good for being able to auto-activate stuff. We can change the name of that. So on begin game. So, okay, we've got that. We want that auto running. Let's set up so we have a block for begin tutorial 0, for example. So we might want to have this display something. We don't want it to automatically execute. We want to have it display something though. So this is where we would use a say dialogue. And I'm going to have this say, welcome to the introduction to Fungus. So that's good, but this is over in this separate block. I want it when we begin to call this block. So I can add in a call command. I can, as we can see, I could select a particular flowchart that it's calling that in. And then I can select which block to run. So in this case, begin tutorial 0. And we have this call mode. You can see it also creates a link between them. So each block has its own set of commands. We can reorder those commands as well. And those commands are the actual instructions, the actions that are being taken. So in this case, the call mode is set to stop. So the easiest way for me to illustrate what the call modes do is I'm going to, after this command, add in a debug log on begin game finished running. So you can do debug logs with this. You can set the different levels. You can also add in comments, which can be really handy. So you can put in comments there. So this is a comment. So it gives you a lot of stuff for being able to control the styling and the appearance of our code, which is great. So, okay, we've got that. Let's see what happens, because we've got the call mode set to stop. And so we want to know what is actually going to happen here. So I'm going to tell this to run. So it runs. We see that dialog. We never see that message though. So we haven't seen the debug log. Well, let's set to stop. What if I change this to something like continue? So with it now set to continue, we run, and we can see both things happen at the same point in time. So if we set to stop, it goes and essentially transfers control over to this other block. It doesn't continue running anything in the current block. If we set it to continue, then it kicks off the other block, and we also continue running and updating. So it allows us to do both. We have continue. Let's go for the other main one that you use, which is wait until finished. So wait until finish is in those three ones: continue, stop, and wait until finished are the three main ones. So now I've got the dialogue. We also notice, and we are going to fix this soon, I can look around and it does move around, which is not great. We haven't seen that message appear yet, but I click, which closes that dialogue, and then we get the message. So we could run stuff in another block, but we don't advance any further until that block is actually finished. So this gives us some really handy ways of controlling and managing the flow of this. But as we saw, with the tutorial, it was going in, we could move around, and that's not really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this back to, it changes this to a continue. Then I'm going to add in 2 blocks. On begin tutorial, actually, I might call this lock player. And what this is going to do is, because we can call functions, but we can also invoke methods. So I can then say, okay, well, invoke method. I give it the player as a target object. I tell it the target component is the character motor. And the target method, well, I have these ones. So I can say, well, set look to locked, which means looking will now no longer update while after this is run. I can duplicate that and switch that to movement lock, again, setting it to true. So this block running will mean that the player controller, or character motor, won't be able to actually move during that, which is good. Depending on the style of game you want, you may want to allow that, you may not want to allow that. It does massively change the feel of the game, so it's down to what your preference is there for it. The other thing then I want to do is I want to duplicate that block. Because, well, we lock the player, we're going to need an unlock option. So unlock player. So then with these, now we may need to come through and just reset the component. So first thing we're going to do is set the look, and we're turning that off. And we do the same thing for the movement lock. Now what I can do is here, I'm going to do a call. And before I display any dialogue, I'm going to tell it to run lock player, but run it as a wait until finished. Then when it is done, I'm going to tell it to do unlock player. And we can see the appearance here will change when it has multiple things that it's running. Because what this will mean is we lock the player, so we can't look around or move. Then we display the tutorial. Then we can go and unlock. So let's run this. So we should expect now that we can't look around. And we can't, and I can't move. As soon as I click, I now have full control back again. So that's good. We've got a bit of a setup happening there. We could do more stuff with the say. So we've got stuff where we could be attaching voiceover. You can extend previous. There is also a lot of tags that we can use here. And if I turn on the tag help, so there's a lot of ones that are familiar that you might have seen from working with stuff like TextMesh Pro, where we can be doing text that's changing bold and italics and color and size, but there's also Fungus specific things. So you can adjust things like the writing speed. You can add in weights. So if you want a character to say something, wait of time, then you can have them continue. You can wait for input. So there's a lot of different things that we can actually be doing there. There's also some things for emphasis, for playing audio, stuff like that. It can also substitute in variables. So there's a lot of different things that we can be doing there with this. Really, really powerful, really handy. But what if we wanted a tutorial character? So a specific character that's providing the tutorial. Well, we can do that. I'm going to create an empty here, and I'm going to call this characters, and not that the position matters, but I'm going to reset it anyway. Then under Fungus, go to create and character, and I'm going to call this tutorial character. Then I can change the name, so tutorial. I can change the color that the name appears. We also have other options where we can change stuff like sound effects. We can set up portraits, the direction they're facing, lots of things we can set up there. With that selected, then I can then in the say dialog come here and say, okay, well, character-wise, that's going to be tutorial character. And that will actually change then when I go to run this. We'll see that dialog will be presented now, and it says tutorial, and it's got that color associated with it that we set up in the actual character. So that can be a really handy way of just distinguishing your different characters and making it easy to know which one's which. Okay, so we've done a little bit of things there. We've made it a bit more useful. We've had stuff where it can link out to our own code, which is really handy. What if we wanted to have stuff where it's not always showing the tutorial, where we were having it actually be an optional thing? And this is where something like variables can come in handy. So I can add in a variable that will sit on the flowchart. We've got a lot of different types here that are supported. This, I just want a Boolean, and I'm just going to call this tutorial 0 shown, which will set to false. And then how I would use that is here. If we go down to flow, so we have quite a lot of different things here. So flow, we've got things like if and else if. We have stuff like some basic loops. So we have simple for loops that will just go over a numerical range. There are, under the collection section, stuff for each. And the collection section also has a lot of stuff for things like picking random stuff. We also have while loops. So there's a lot of different things that we've got flow control wise for this. In this case, I just need an if. So I'm going to add in an if, bring it up top so we can drag things around. We notice it's indented everything. So we don't want everything indented, and we do need to make sure we add in an end. So with it changed like if that, we can see we have the if, call, and then the end. We could be adding in else if, stuff like if that, so you can build up reasonably complicated checks there. You can also nest these, and that will also work. With the if selected, then I can set up different conditions, and I can have multiple conditions, and I can choose how they get combined. So I can say if they're getting combined with an or, so only one of the conditions needs to be true for it to run, or if it's getting combined with an and, where every single one of the conditions must be true in order for it to run. So in this case, I'm only testing a single condition, so it won't matter. We can then pick a particular variable. So in this case, tutorial 0 shown. And I want it to be equal to false. So in other words, it has not been shown. If it has not been shown, then I want it to run that. For completeness in that tutorial, I should set that variable. So we can set variables, and I'll do that at the very beginning. And I can pick my variable. I want it to then be set to be equal to true. We do have different operators, and the ones that are shown here will be based upon the type of the variable. So with that, if I go back to the scene, and we can see the flowchart, we've got our variables here, and tutorial 0 shown is set as false. So if I run it, everything should work as it did before, the tutorial gets shown, but we can see that's also now changed to true. If instead I start it at true and then run it, then we don't see the tutorial. So we've got a little bit of logic happening there that means we can control whether these get shown. We could then be saving out the status of stuff like of that to player prefs and synchronizing that. So those are things that we're able to be doing. So let's set up a couple of custom commands for this. So that's something where what I want to do is just a couple of simple little commands that show you two different styles, two different types of how we can do this. So I'm going to call this Fungus commands. I'm going to create one where, okay, this command is going to be set tutorial complete. And let's set this one up first. So when we're setting up our commands, they're reasonably straightforward. The logic for them is quite simple. As I said, this is one of the things I like about Fungus, how easy it is to add in extra commands. So adding in a simple command like this. Firstly, we bring in Fungus. We then change this, so rather than inheriting from mono behavior, it inherits from command, and we get rid of our start and update. So I need to set up for this command info. So with setting up the command info, firstly we give it a category. So I'm just going to call this custom commands, just custom. Then we give it a name, set tutorial complete. And this is what we would see when we go to add a command, that list of ones that drop down, or if we were searching, this is what we would search for. Marks a tutorial as being complete. Now the other thing we need to do, because command a few steps up is based off of mono behavior, we don't want it to be something that can be just added onto any object. So by doing add component menu like that, that will actually get rid of it being able to be added. So that's good. Well, what we then want to do is we want to have it that, okay, what are the key bits we need to set up? So it's a few functions we need. We need an override void on enter. Now we don't want to run base on enter. What we do want to run is continue. So continue is something that is very, very important. So a block has a list of commands. It runs one command, then once that's finished, it goes on to the next. The way that it knows that the previous command is finished and it can go to the next is by the previous command running continue. So when we run continue, we are saying that we are finished, execute the next command. So it's always important to make sure that we have that there. The other thing we can set up is a public override string get summary. So this displays a little bit of summary information. And we'll also have one where we can change the color of the command. So this can be really handy if you want to group commands and have all of the similar ones a consistent color. Can make it a lot easier for things being differentiated there. Now I'm just going to pick a color that I know will already kind of work. So that will do. Well, setting tutorial complete is going to set something in player prefs. So that means we need to be able to know what we're actually setting there. So we're going to have a serialized field, string, and this is going to be the value or tutorial ID. Then what we'll do down here is we'll do player prefs set int. The name of the int, we will use tutorial ID. dot complete, and we will set that to 1. And then for good measure, player prefs dot save. And what I will also do is a debug log flagging tutorial ID as complete. So this should give us a new command now that we'll be able to add in, so that as well as setting that Boolean, we can be doing a bit more than that. So what I would do is I go to plus, and then we'll be able to see under custom, set tutorial complete. I can see the ID. Now, this command is quite simple in terms of the data that we needed. If we have more complex data, or if we have stuff that's a bit more dynamic, as we saw a little bit with the stuff with variables, those bits of UI can actually change depending upon the sort of data type that you're linking to. If we were doing that, we would actually need to do a custom inspector here, and that's something that we can do that. So Fungus, if we set up similar to what you would do for a regular inspector, you can set up a custom inspector here for it. There are some really great examples. This is something where if you see a particular command that does something and it's working like you would want your one to do, then you can actually just go and view the code for it. So like the call command, if I type in call, it's probably going to be there as call editor. So I can go to call editor, and similar to our commands, there's a specific thing we inherit off of, and it follows very similar structure to custom inspectors, but this just gives us a way that we could set this up if we wanted to. And if you're needing to look at examples of it, pick a command that's already doing close to what you're after, and then you can check the code out for it. So we can close that. And what we want to do is we just want to make sure that this command is running and is working. So we should see that appear in our console here. Now in terms of the timing of that, I am going to bring that up to the top. And let's run this. So you can see it said flagging tutorial ID as complete. Now I did slightly mess up the syntax there. $sign is supposed to go before that, so we'll just rerun again just to be certain that it's actually working. And the other thing I'll do is I'm going to bring the game window down here because I want you to be able to see that when we go to run, if we have that flowchart open, we can see where it is at. So we can see it's at begin tutorial 0 and which command it's actually currently running. We can also, with this, if I right-click on a command, you can do things like play from selected or stop everything and play. So we've actually got some decent debugging tools in there. And then when I click here, you can see that it's advanced, and we can see we've got our message about that one being flagged. So that's great. We've got stuff being read there. What about something where we're sort of populating the variables? So we can do that. So this is something where I'd probably end up setting up a more dedicated generic system, but this is just about illustrating some key specific things for adding in additional commands. So I'm going to call this sync tutorial complete flags. So open up that. The other thing that I'm going to do here is this here. I'm going to actually return this. Flag as complete. So for my sync tutorial complete flags, I am going to bring all of this over because it's largely going to be the same. So it's going to make it a little bit easier. Just transfer over the name, bring it up. So this is going to be sync tutorial complete flags. synchronizes the tutorial completion flags. And we'll just have this synchronize tutorial flags, tutorial completion flags. So, okay, well, this will have a list of tutorial IDs that it needs to populate. And then what it needs to do is it needs to get each of those. So, okay, that's fine. You can do a for each var tutorial ID in tutorial IDs is complete is going to be a player prefs get int, and it will be tutorial ID dot complete. I'll give a default value of 0, and it's complete if that is 1. So we need to then tell Fungus that that is complete. And so we're going to make sure we've got our variable naming consistent is going to be one thing here. So these are all called tutorial 0 shown. So we're going to actually rename that to tutorial 0.complete. So you can use stuff like that in it. So it doesn't support dots, but it does support the other naming, which is okay. So we need to set that variable. Well, if we do this, we can actually get the flowchart. So what I'm going to do, linked flowchart is equal to get flowchart, because I don't want to be running it multiple times. And then I can say, well, linked flowchart set Boolean variable, and this will be tutorial ID complete, and that gets set to is complete. Update the status of the tutorial completion flags. So what we should then be able to do is we place that command at the very beginning. So in our onBegin game, we have sync tutorial complete flags, put that right up to the very top. We'll also notice with this, that message has updated because we changed the summary. Okay, so we've added in our sync tutorial complete flags. We then need to make sure we've got the IDs present. So we can set that up. So we can add in tutorial 0. So with that added in, it should synchronize and then should go and not actually show the tutorial. What we can also do, just as an initial test, is if we want, we can actually comment out code. So if we don't want it to, definitely don't want it to run the actual tutorial code, because that can set that variable. Little checkbox here, if you untick that, it's like commenting out that command. It won't run. So then we can have our tutorial selected, run this. What we're looking for is that being selected. And we can see it has updated it and ticked it off. Even though tutorial didn't launch, it got flagged as done. So now we take this and we re-enable it. Then we'll have our tutorial will actually not show up because we have gone and properly read things in from player prefs and cleaned things out. So that's great. So we've got a couple of simple commands happening there. Now, if we wanted to reset player prefs, that could be a handy thing there. So we might set up a similar thing, and we'll have a clear tutorial complete flags, where what that will do is, kind of like the name says on the tin, we'll take our sync tutorial complete flags, and I am just going to copy the entire thing because essentially we're just making some very minor changes. And for each tutorial, we are going to be doing a set int to 0. And we're going to then go to player prefs, save. So here. So this is then something we can just add in, and that will actually wipe out all of those settings if we need to. So what I'm going to do for that is, in terms of where we add that in, so let's add in a block via tutorial completion. And this is going to have that flag setup, add in tutorial 0. Now, in terms of when we want this to run, so a couple of options there in terms of where we want it to run. We could set up execute on event. We could be listening for stuff like a particular input action, so we could link that to a specific one. We can also link and listen for specific key. Now, the key, we can tell it what key we want it to listen for. So we could do something like, okay, when the delete key is pressed. Now, that is one where that was something that was very reliant on the old input system. And so although that shows up, the new input system, you can't actually use that one. So that's something to watch for, that we can't use key pressed. We would have to use input action for the actual checking there. And that would mean we would need to create an input action reference and be listening from that. There is other stuff we could be responding to, various events, things like of that. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set that to none, and I'm going to set up so that we just actually have a specific room that when we head into it, it's going to clear out the flags. So I am going to create just a cube, and I'm going to position it like this, make it 5, I think 8 is probably about right size-wise, and 2. So that's good. So the idea will be is that we wander into here, and it's going to clear those flags. So I'll set this as a trigger. We will turn off the mesh renderer, and I'm going to give this a little bit of script logic. So I'm going to call this a trigger volume. So all this is going to do is when something enters it, can send a particular command. So void on trigger enter. We will just have an obligatory filter, so we can have string. Actually, we'll have a list of strings tagged to check. So if tags to check contains not other tag, actually no, yes, other tag, then we'll invoke an event. So we'll have using Unity engine.events, and we'll just have a serialize field, Unity event, on triggered. So then here we can just invoke that. So this will just be a little helper script we can attach onto the trigger volume there. Trigger volume, attach the script. So when it gets activated, well, we can drag in our tutorial. Then we've got a bunch of different things we can select. The one we want is flowchart, and then we have execute block, and then we give it the name of the block to run. So it will be clear tutorial completion. So we tell it that will run that specific block. Then I want to make sure I can tell that that block is actually run. So what I am also going to do is I am going to keep the flowchart stuff, and also When we do that, those get set to false. So what this should mean is that it can run, it won't show the tutorial, which is correct. We'll see this get set to true, but then when I walk into that room, it should then get set to false. So this is the room here that I need. So I wander in. Now it hasn't activated it because, easy thing to forget, we have to actually give it a tag to check, which is player. Make sure that the player is properly tagged, which they are. So we have our tutorial selected. Wander over here, we wander in, you can see that that gets cleared. So then the next time I run, I should get the tutorial appearing, which I do. Flag gets set. And then if I go and run it again, that flag will not get run. So the flag will not run the tutorial, so that's good. So we've got the ability to actually run stuff there, populate and synchronize it with the existing things. So that's a really handy setup. The final thing I want to show is if we've got a command that is actually running and is taking a bit of a time. It's a little bit of a delayed reaction. So I'm going to duplicate this trigger volume and delayed command demo. And we'll set up another block here. That will be delayed command demo. So this will be white player prefs, delayed command. So we're going to set up a Fungus command that will just do something after a bit of a time. So create a message after delay. Because as we said, continue is how we actually indicate that we are done. So by holding off on sending continue, we can actually allow it to have stuff that is going to take a bit of time to run. So show message after delay, I'm going to steal from set tutorial complete because it's covering pretty much a lot of the stuff we need. Bring in Fungus, that's based on command, and we also then need to bring in these two. So this will be show message after delay. Throws a message after a delay. So we need to be able to set the message. We also need to be able to set the delay. So we'll update things like our summary. So in delay seconds, send, and then we display our message. Or log message. So that's good. So then how we actually do that is we specifically will not run continue. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a I enumerator and then wait for delay. Then in that wait for delay is when we'll do the continue. And we'll do a yield return new, wait 4 seconds, give it delay, debug log info, actually log warning, let's make it nice and visible, of message. And then all we do here is start coroutine, wait for delay. And we specifically do not run the continue. So we could be listening for anything at this point. So that should be good. We can now add that command in. So our delayed command demo we add in, and all of these are appearing under custom. So show message after delay. So after 2 seconds, we will just log out hello. So that command will be invoked as soon as I wander into the room. So wandered into the room, a couple of seconds pass, and get the message. I leave it, wander back in, a couple more seconds will pass, and we get the message again. So you could use that for anything where you want stuff happening over a period of time, or where you're waiting for a particular other thing to happen. So I've used that for stuff where like quest completion is a good example there, where I might be waiting for, well, this quest and this quest to both be flagged as completed. So I start up the coroutine. I can then, in the coroutine, periodically be checking those. So really, really handy way of working with this. So there's a lot of powerful things that we can be doing with Fungus. We have very, very, very much just scratched the surface. There's a lot of stuff there for controlling animations and audio, for tweening stuff between sort of different values. You can do things like fades and everything like that. There's a lot of really powerful options for it. And it's definitely something where I want to do a few more videos at later points looking at Fungus, talking about and running through how to build some of the different additions that I have made to it that really sort of expand its capabilities. So there's going to be more ones that we'll talk about in future. If there's particular areas that you're interested in with something like a Fungus or with any of the videos, feel free to chuck in a comment below as something. And yeah, if it's something that I can then do a video on, then at some point I will. If it's not, it might be something that's a little bit too out of my area, or that it might not be feasible for me to do a video on that. That's something where I might still be able to identify some resources that I can refer you to. Thanks, folks. I hope you found the video helpful and interesting. If you have, chuck in a thumbs up and subscribe. Really helps out, really appreciated. If you are looking for the code for the project, then I've placed that in the description below. There's also the link to where to get Fungus is there in the description. If you've got any comments, chuck those in, any questions, always happy to help out. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, then I do have a Patreon, and there's a link to that in the description below. But until next time, bye.